Hey everybody, welcome to The Otherppl Show, a weekly podcast featuring in-depth interviews with today's leading writers. My name is Brad Listi. I'm in Los Angeles. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing all right. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. So today is Friday, and as such, I'm going to be doing a flashback where I dig into the Otherppl archives and share an outtake from an episode from the past. Today, an outtake from episode 381, my conversation with author and literary agent Bill Clegg. Episode 381 first aired on September 23rd, 2015. Bill Clegg is a notable literary agent and the author of the best-selling memoirs Portrait of an Addict as a Young Man and another one called 90 Days. He is also the author of the novels Did You Ever Have a Family and The End of the Day. A flashback to episode 381, my conversation with Bill Clegg, is coming up in just a bit. Don't forget to sign up for my weekly email newsletter. You can do that at bradlisti.substack.com. You will hear from me in your inbox once a week. I will let you know about the latest episodes of this program. I will also share with you a list of links to things that I've been reading and finding interesting. So if that sounds good, go sign up over at bradlisti.substack.com. You can also join the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you are a regular listener in particular, somebody who tunes in week after week, episode after episode, if you get something from this show and appreciate the work that I do, I hope you'll join the Patreon over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. All right, so it is time for today's flashback, an outtake from episode 381, my conversation with author and literary agent Bill Clegg. Episode 381 first aired on September 23rd, 2015. A reminder that the full episode is available in the feed, so if you enjoy this flashback and you want to go in for the full hour with Bill Clegg, you can do that. Just search for episode 381 wherever you listen to podcasts. Okay, so I think that does it. Let's get to this week's flashback. Here I am back in 2015 in conversation with Bill Clegg. I'm interested as well in the fact that you're coming at this with an agent's background. And I know you get asked about this a lot as well, but it has to give you insight into the process from soup to nuts. Like you go into the deal-making process, you finish your book, you have an agent yourself.
I do.
So your former boss is Jennifer Rudolph Walsh.
Yeah.
She's your agent.
Right.
And
I believe in agents.
You believe in agents.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you hand her the manuscript. She reads the manuscript. I presume she gives you feedback. You guys work on the manuscript together before taking it out, just like a normal process.
Yeah.
But then when it comes time to pick which houses to go to, which editors to go to, that's obviously got to be more intensively collaborative than it otherwise would be because you know the business.
Maybe, but I have a lot of writers who I work with who are very familiar with the book publishing world. I mean, it's and sometimes that's good. It's people who, for example, go to an MFA program in New York, like Columbia or NYU. They have occasion to cross paths with agents and editors and all sorts of people in the business. And so I often, before sending out a manuscript, will get a list of editors that writer, hopes to be published by, and they want to see their book. So I don't think that like my fluency in that world is in some cases, I made a couple of suggestions to the list, but also in terms of literary fiction, it's not exactly the longest list in the world, so there's only so many possibilities.
Right.
And so I definitely had a few opinions and then followed Jennifer's lead.
Okay. So let me ask you broadly, not specifically about you, but just broadly in terms of publishing. When a publisher invests in a book for a goodly sum, whatever it happens to be, 6 figures, 7 figures, they put a bunch of money up for the advance. They then tend to go to bat for the book more? True or false?
Really, after a book is bought, like I think people on the outside tend to be like very concerned with like how much gets paid, and I'm concerned with how much gets paid for my clients because it's their livelihood. So of course, I want them to be paid as much as possible. It does not mean that books that get very little by way of an advance don't get a full court press and a fierce publication. There's such a long period of time between acquisition and publication that there's a narrative that occurs like after that for all the people in-house who read the book, and you may have like a series of independent booksellers who become obsessed with it early on, or you might have somebody in sales who then tells somebody else in a different department to read it, and then that finds its way to the publicity department and to the marketing department. Like I've seen books that have come in, with very little fanfare, become lead titles later based on how people react to it in that kind of great kind of domino effect. And that's what happens in the world after too.
I was going to say that's like a microcosm of just word of mouth.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of books, is that like people have a reaction to it that's powerful, and hopefully and then that like leads oftentimes to other people reading it. And if those people happen to be librarians, or if they happen to be booksellers, then they have great influence on people buying that book or picking it up or checking it out of the library. So yeah, advances are terrific, and people need to make a living and pay their mortgages and all that stuff. And I'm all for big advances for literary fiction. But it's not a foregone conclusion of anything.
It also puts pressure on a book to perform in the marketplace, doesn't it? Or at least one could perceive it that way. If you get a big advance, you're then thinking to yourself like, well, this thing better earn out. Or
yeah, I think no matter what somebody gets paid, like if they've worked really hard on a book and it goes into the world, there's plenty of pressure. You'll find it, like no matter what.
Right.
So
any author is going to go through that. So you obviously know more about what your clients go through now that you've published 3 books.
Yeah, I have definitely been on this side of it a few times now. So I have a keen appreciation for what they go through.
Has it made you a better agent?
I hope so. I hope that sort of all experience informs how I work with my writers, and also how I react to their manuscripts, because a reaction to literature is informed by everything that comes before. But I think before I was published ever, I think I had a kind of toughen up buttercup approach to publicity, just like, this is the time, don't complain, get out there. And now I know, more intimately sort of what that exposure feels like. So yeah, I think I'm more sensitive to it. And to the extent that I can ever use my own experience in a comforting way, so that I don't just seem to be like preaching from my safe office on Fifth Avenue, like, as they're like in Wichita and 2 people turned up at a bookstore, like, I've had that experience, not Wichita in particular, but like, it's an exposing thing.
It can be humbling.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope it makes me a better agent.
So do you know, you get longlisted for the Booker. You get a buzzworthy deal, let's just put it that way. The reviews have been mostly great. There's been a lot of good buzz. You have a lot of people interested in talking to you. You're doing Bookworm. You're doing this show. You're getting in, a lot of the glossies and all that kind of stuff happens. Based on past experience with clients, and I guess based on past experience as a author publishing 2 memoirs, is there a point at which you feel like, okay, this thing's going to go? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is it about a book? What is it that makes some books go and others that might be worthy of a big readership not getting them? Is it
Do you have any sense of it? Is it just word of mouth?
I never have the answer to that.
No.
Never. I don't. I really don't. And
I was hoping you would. I've been asking people for 400 interviews.
There's no answer to it. And you know, like, and some things don't happen right away, or it's just the more I stick around and attend the publications of my clients and friends and just watch my colleagues in the business go to the mat for the books that they care about, and then you watch them go into the world. It's really it's a mystery. I mean, there are some things that are meaningful, but you know, the reading public ends up becoming, you know, the judge of all things, and sometimes swiftly, you know, sometimes slowly, and then great things like, you know, awards later. You know, there's books that have been completely ignored and then like somehow like end up winning or becoming a finalist for something, and then everybody pays attention and everybody gallops to it quickly.
Right.
And it's just the story of books, and it has, you know, a kind of a lottery feel in a way, like you just never know. And I think that's what makes it interesting. It's like, and it makes sense. I mean, think about a book and how much time it takes to invest in actually reading a novel or a memoir or a biography or a collection of poems. And people just have like very subjective responses. And so to get everybody to agree on something, like, I think it's great when people buy, like, everybody agrees on a book and buys it and it sells a lot of copies. It is not like, but like, I mean, it really isn't my primary concern when it comes to what I decide to age in, and it isn't my like metric for success.
What is your primary concern?
It's excellence, and something that is exciting to me as literature, it's exciting to me as art, and then if I feel like I can be useful in any way in terms of helping it succeed on its own terms editorially, and then guiding it toward publication, and then along the way, and then that career afterwards, which is fascinating to be on the front lines of, if I can be useful in bringing people to that. But sometimes, you know, some writers, it's never going to be more than like a couple of thousand, you know, copies sold and some fierce fans. But those books may influence books that may sell 100,000 copies.
Well, I'm thinking of like the profile of Joy Williams in the New York Times Magazine. I felt like on my Twitter it was like Joy Williams Day last Sunday. She's one of those. I mean, she's got more than 2,000 fans, but she's one of those writers that writers love, and
yeah,
she's amassed this following over her career that's just really passionate.
Yeah,
you know, and she would, and then I was thinking too, as you were talking, there's a writer that FSG just published her stuff posthumously, and her name is escaping me, and she's a bestseller now, 11 years after her death, and I'm, you know.
Yeah,
that can happen too.
But we're just, you know, but the country's so obsessed with fame. It's like, you know, like, and the literary world is just as vulnerable to it. And it's just like, I think, you know, some of my favorite books, like, you know, some people have read and a lot of people haven't. And clients that I've worked with, you know, haven't had that great readership, but capture my imagination more than ones that have sold, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of copies. It's just that it is a business, publishing. But in the end, like, you know, literature isn't. Like, you know, it's on its own, it's art. On its own, it's something that's created by somebody. It matters to them for a while. They move on to something else. They create the body of work, like, expands from there. And so some of it will sell, some of it will get great reviews, some of it will get bad reviews, some of it will be completely ignored, which is a lot of the case. But it really doesn't have anything to do with the merit of the thing itself. But, you know, it's why I recommend that writers leave New York if they get a book deal. Is I think the further away you get from that conversation,
you're still there.
I don't have a choice. I'm an agent, and that's my primary identification.
You got to be in New York to be a good agent, you think?
I could probably be like on Mars now, but like, because nobody really needs to see me. I can pick up the phone and say, like, hey, I think you should read this. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But I have a husband who works in network news and is very much in New York, and so we're in New York, and, you know, I built a life there.
It's a great city.
It's a great city, and I love it. I absolutely love it. But I also am not relying on, like, I mean, for the first however many years, 15 years, even longer in New York, I wasn't a published author. I didn't plan on being a published author. It wasn't like it wasn't something that was the goal. And so, but if you are choosing to be a novelist or a poet, I think it's enriching to be in a community like New York with other artists, but I find that the chatter around who got what and is demoralizing and corrosive and corrupting to the process. And so,
plus the people are super competitive.
Yeah, it's like it's just, I think like there is a confusion of, I mean, like in the beginning of this conversation, it was like some do well and some don't do well. Some blow up, some don't, and that becomes the lens that like people look at a book, and which I think is it makes sense within the context of a publishing question, but in the context of literature, it's sort of like, to me, it's our job as agent and publisher and publicist and all, the little army that assembles around a book. That has to be our primary concern, to get it out to as many people as possible. I just don't, want, readers and the writers themselves to internalize that as a measure of success and failure.
All right, everybody, there we have it. That's today's flashback, episode 381, my conversation with Bill Clegg, author and literary agent. It first aired on September 23rd, 2015. A reminder that the full episode is available in the feed, so if you like what you heard and you want more, go find episode 381 wherever you listen to podcasts. You can read more about Bill Clegg, the literary agent, at thecleggagency.com. Read his books, follow him on Instagram. Once again, that was Bill Clegg, episode 381. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Sign up for my newsletter at bradlisti.substack.com. Join the Other People Patreon at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. If you have 2 minutes and you want to help me out a little bit, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, wherever. Rate the show, review the show. It helps the show find new listeners. If you would like to get an Other People t-shirt or join the Other People book club, you can do that at the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you would like to read my latest book, it is a novel called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything, available in trade paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. I narrate the audiobook. So if that sounds good, go get it. It's a novel. Once again, it's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. All right, so coming up on Sunday, I will be in conversation with Rita Bullwinkle, author of a terrific debut novel called Headshot. It is available from Viking. One of the most auspicious debut novels of the year. You don't want to miss it. My conversation with Rita Bullwinkle coming up on Sunday. Stay tuned.